Hello, Solomon Mars here, and this is the video commentary for Goblin issue 12B. We're just gonna jump right into I this cover was just I didn't want to reveal the the brother character Nani. I didn't want to reveal that particular character right off the bat. I didn't show his whole face. I just did a really extreme close up on his face because I figured people would, mistake him for 26 instead of, thinking it was someone else. I didn't think that, maybe they would see that tattoo on his forehead and assume it was a part of the character. I don't know. And, of course, always just kind of being lazy. With at least with covers, just terrible with covers. So let's 12B kindling. Got a couple of little embers floating away in the air there, and I don't know. I had a lot of fun with the issue. From what I remember, mostly because it allowed me to play with a slightly different set of, like my color palette was a little bit different. I played with a lot of colors associated with fire, and I got to play with a lot of effects, and the backgrounds, they were just these sort of crumbling, falling apart buildings and things. So I got to play around with a lot of that and playing with layer filters, and it was a lot of fun. This is actually really interesting, showing how limber and how nimble the Rock Eater is. She's just grandmother, but she's not an old grandma. You know how you get those really old grandmas, and then you have like the young grandma. She's a young grandma. I mean, I'm not exactly sure what her age is. I never sat down and figured that one out. But she was definitely young when Jeff was born. I do like this picture of I cannot remember his name all of a sudden, but Sune's pet sprite there running. It was a fun picture. I think I went through like 3 or 4 different pictures, if I remember. I probably still have them somewhere. I tend to keep rejects. I don't know why. I just keep them in a big folder, all my reject artwork from all these different books. But I my first couple of ideas, I remember it was just straight on, running sequences like from the side. I was, like looking at referencing a lot of like cheetahs and tigers running, and it never felt right because I was like, he's not a cheetah, he's not a tiger, he's not that kind of animal, and then I don't want it to look so bulky and muscly and stuff. I wanted him to look loose, and I was trying to figure out if I wanted him to look like he was running towards the camera or running away from the camera, and I finally decided on him running away, technically, away from the camera towards the Rock Eater. And I don't know. I think I like the exaggeration of the picture of the character. It's kind of cool. It's a really jelly sort of looking picture, really loose. Yeah, this is another example of like those backgrounds that I was talking about, where you can see like the color palette, dealing with a lot of colors that are associated with fire, and that particular that sort of intense environmental condition, the heat. I wanted the palette to be very, very warm. I think it contrasts with her character, the colors of her outfit really well. Not so much with her skin tone, but definitely her clothing pops out. You know, it really pops out. And like especially in this picture, you know, she just kind of sits perfectly in front of everything, and that's really good. And there were a lot of layers in all of the backgrounds. This is kind of a funny picture with her ears sort of being expressive. You know, uh, I don't like that picture too much. That picture kind of should have been rejected, but I couldn't think of really what to do. And honestly, now I probably would go back and I'd put the ground somewhere under there so you could see how high off the ground he was, and I'd put a little bit of a shadow down there and everything. But honestly, who knows? I was probably tired when I was working on that. Probably. Oh, this is good because what this was a visual confirmation of the relationship between Jeff and his grandmother, and that is that she probably is the one who taught him this particular uh, um, bit of logic, uh, which makes sense because she's the rock eater, and it's sort of a rock based sort of salt pillar ability thing. I don't really know what to call it, but she probably is the one that taught him how to do it, and he does it a lot. But I just wanted to sort of bridge that sort of gap between the two, you know, and show that there is a relationship between the two characters. Um, that was fun. I do regret ultimately not using Lemur and Kelly. His whole name is much longer. I do regret not using these two sprites to a greater effect. They were supposed to play a much bigger role in this story arc, and I trimmed a lot of it because some of it I didn't like. You know, like the old ideas were that Lemur and Kelly could talk, and I got really disenchanted with the idea of them going on these monologues when they were really just supposed to be like these attack dogs in a way, you know. They were really supposed to just sort of be like these just something blocking the path, you know. But ultimately, just an element to, you know, make the story progress. To be honest, it was just, you know, something to progress the story. So back to Jeff chasing down Sune and Amy. I really like, I like the inclusion of the backgrounds just outside of the Red Castle. It sort of, there's this I don't want to call it a dichotomy. It's a balance, really, but it's a duality. You know, you have these dueling sort of visualizations. You know, the red, this sort of red clay look of the castle surroundings these you know, craggly pillars, and then you have this green foresty expanse in the background, and I don't know. I liked it. You know, in my mind, it's much more vivid, but you know, an artist can only do so much interpretation, you know. I mean, it's up to your ability at the time. Yeah, Amy always comes off as very, well, I wouldn't say that she doesn't come off weak, but I wanted to show how vulnerable this particular character is. She's not a logic smith, and well, whether or not, you know, she can fight, who knows? That has yet to be seen, really. I'm sure she can. You know, I'm sure she's fairly. Yeah, I'm sure she can, and we'll get to that later on in this commentary, because there's something that's said later on in the issue that would maybe lead readers to believe that maybe there's something more to Amy than meets the eye. But I definitely wanted to show the vulnerability of the character and her connection with Mumu and how much he means to her. And she's chasing someone that she knows could kill her, trying to get Mumu back. I mean, she knows how dangerous Sethire. I said Sune earlier, didn't I? Sethire. She knows how dangerous Sethire is, but she's still willing to risk her life to get Mumu back. You know, it's a very precious thing to her, Mumu. This is a cool scene, you know, him running. There's a lot of really good movement in there, and I use filters to sort of do a motion blur on the background, and I mean that the middle layer, you know, there's the foreground, the middle ground, and the background. The middle ground is actually done in Photoshop, so that I purposely made it so that it was swishy, and then I hit it with a motion blur, so that it's even more sort of swishy. Swishy? I don't know. I'm running out of words to use. But it sort of makes him look like he's moving fast, and I like that, you know, along with the arc of his back, and the pulling of his sleeve so that it's all the way up to the ball joint. What is that called? Whatever that is, you know, right there at the shoulder. I didn't really pass anatomy class in college. I had 2 anatomy classes, an advanced anatomy and a regular anatomy class, and I didn't do too well in either, really. You know, I know every artist says, oh, you should always practice anatomy, and that'll make you a better artist. And to a degree, yes, I agree. Practice anatomy. Definitely take some anatomy classes, but be forewarned, they will be boring. Unless that's your thing, they will be boring. But it will, in the end, you'll come out having a better ability to exaggerate. That's one of the things, you know, some of the best cartoonists out there, they can exaggerate and have really cartoonish characters because they understand anatomy, and so they have the ability to comfortably exaggerate those. And I'll be honest with you, I have looked through early work of mine and like pre-anatomy classes, you know, before I ever started taking anatomy, like in high school and middle school. And well, middle school is about as far back as I look, and you can see, like, when I started taking anatomy classes in high school, you can see the slight influences it was having. I was concentrating on arms, concentrating on legs, and kind of feet, because hands and feet are the thing that I can't draw, or at least I really used to not be able to draw them. I'm a little bit better now. They're more, you know, you can see them more. They're more prevalent, you know, than they used to be. I used to always hide my hands in pockets. I would never draw feet. But mostly it was always the torsos of my characters that looked odd. They looked unnatural. And so after high school, I really started, you know, practicing anatomy because I wanted my characters to look natural, even though they were cartoonish. And so that's the benefit. That is definitely the benefit of anatomy. But unless it's your thing, it's going to be a little boring. And I don't know anyone that really enjoyed anatomy. I mean, I don't know any students. You know, none of the other students around me, I think, enjoyed it in my classes when I was in college. Yeah, so explosions. Water explosions are fun. Yeah, that. Oh man, oh, it's a shame. A lot of really exaggerated, taffy-like imagery in these pictures with Jeff, and I love that about this. This one's a little weird because it's still Jeff running down the side of this pillar, but he's also about to jump, and I feel like his right leg, the leg on the left, should have been pushed back a little bit more. But you know, hey. It's a nice picture though. And there's Amy getting knocked through the air. Sapphire doing one of those little explosions in the water. That propelled her in, I think, the previous issue. It propelled her up through the air. Uh, and she's... Oh. That water could have been a little bit better. It looks really foamy. I don't know. It's weird looking. But I was still learning, how to... I was still learning, like, lasso tool effects. Like, all of this stuff is done with the lasso tool in Photoshop. And then I use the layer effects to sort of create a degree of translucency that still retains the color. And that's how you get, like, you can get overlapping translucencies that are still sort of, they have like a blue, but it's sort of white, clear, so, like so that it's a little bit more like water. I'm trying not to concentrate on this stuff for too long. I do like this transition, the 1, 2 jumping into the air. That's nice. It's nice. I love the arc on his body. That's great. I should have put a shadow somewhere underneath there, so that you could tell that he was off the ground. I mean, you can tell he's off the ground, but in reality, there would be a shadow underneath him somewhere down there. Maybe hitting the water would have been a cool effect if it was coming slightly off the edge of that pillar and slightly onto the water. That would have been a nice effect, but it's too late. It's far too late. That's cool. I like that. I like that scene. And then he catches her midair. That's great. These were actually really, really fun. These were fun. And I didn't actually think about what I was going to do until I started penciling the pages. And when I got to this point, I was like, okay, all of this takes place underneath the water, and I don't want to pencil. Because if I pencil it, it's going to make the images too bold. And I was like, okay, so how can I do this? And I thought, oh, all right, well, maybe I can find a way where I can just draw everything 100% in the computer with no lines, just completely lineless. And I thought maybe that would sort of work as far as showing how things looked slightly altered underwater. And it would make it look like there was something between the character and us. There was something there, and they're surrounded by liquid. They're surrounded by something. And so that's what I went with. And these pages actually involved a lot of layers. The clothes were done on a different layer than the skin, and all the ripples in the water, and the bubbles, everything. And I mean, the fact that you can see like the trees, because we're underneath the water, and you can start to see the trees above the water, and it's just the whole thing. It was done, just completely in Photoshop. And it may look a little weird, but I'm really, really happy with how it is, because the water is. It's not clear. It's slightly murky. It's that weird sort of water that you don't get at rivers. You sort of get in I don't know. It's really, really hard to describe this particular water, but it's the kind of water that you really don't want to open your eyes in. It could be very dangerous, to open your eyes. You get nice little tiny little creatures in your eyes. But I was happy with the outcome. There's Sankofa, who got separated from Jeff. He's unconscious. He got knocked off. But then Sankofa wakes up first. He's so cute. Look at him. Little pear potato thingamabob. I don't know. He's so weird looking. More of those scenes where he's down there. They're down there. I really like the little seaweed stuff down there, the little algae type seaweed things growing. Those were fun. Those were a little hard to do. And of course, those are just replicated over and over and over. You can see the same patterns on a couple of them. I just changed the color on them because they were really difficult to make and really boring to make. So we push forward, and they've been saved. I decided not to show how Sankofa would save them. Obviously, he would use logic. I would think it would be obvious that he would use logic. And, since Sankofa technically is a little bit stronger, he's stronger than, like, Jeff alone. Of course, Jeff and Sankofa combined are strong. are really really strong, but Sankofa is definitely more skilled, and he would know how to move things that without having to use his hands. But I decided not to show it because it's not necessary to show every little thing, every little detail. Uh, but I mean, I love how lanky the character, Jeff looks. Like one foot's pivoted. His toes and his feet are sort of pivoting inward, and they're just kind of flopping there. Really, it looks like they just kind of got pulled out of the water, and they're just ugh. And Amy is still. Look at her. She's so. I wanted people to sort of pity her, and feel for her and feel for Mumu, and I wanted people to see how much Mumu meant to her. And I know it sounds it's so weird. I feel kind of self-conscious admitting this because I'm afraid that it sounds like I'm trying to deliberately manipulate people's emotions, to elicit an emotional response from people. But I suppose that's what all media does. Television, books, video games, comics are books, but all that stuff. The writers are trying to elicit emotions from people, and I don't usually deliberately try to do that. I just kind of write what's in my mind, what's in my heart. I just kind of want to tell a story, but every now and then I do something to make a connection. And because I want people to understand the characters a little bit more, and I want them to understand Amy a little bit more, because she's a really misunderstood character because there's not a lot of depth. At this point, there's not a lot of depth involving the character. She's just kind of there, a sort of tag-along character who is slowly being unwrapped. At least they're all sort of being unwrapped slowly, but she probably has the slowest reveal of all the characters, except I would assume maybe Sankofa. Maybe I'm saying too much, but so let's keep going. So we're back to the Rock Eater, and trying to investigate. She's trying to figure out, because she realized what Reduha was doing. She could sense it. She's just that in tune to the universe and the way that logic works. And she sees what a mess. This fight between Reduha and 26. They're tearing up the place. Who's gonna fix all this? Well, the Rock Eater. That was kind of fun. This little jumping backwards scene. I wish I could have figured out how to get it to really look intense. Like there was there's no weight to his jumping, and I'm okay with it now, though. I mean, 26 is another slightly. There are a lot of tragic characters in the series, but 26 is one. He's a misunderstood character. Talk more about that later. In a different commentary. I like that pose, and there's the thing that he's running from. It's really I loved working on that, and again, it's just me using the lasso tool to create this creature and the way that it works, and that is a very monkey-like pose that 26 is in, very monkey-like. But I figured it's gonna look like that. I mean, you're swinging around, one-armed. I remember me and my friends jumping around in trees, jumping off of branches, and trying to do flips and hurting ourselves. And, you just take from life. I think that's another one of those things that artists say, work from life. And that's just an example of that. I remembered stuff from my childhood and used it, replicated it, my memories in my art. And that's all it is. You don't have to go out, every weekend walking around and doing life art sketches in your sketchbooks and stuff like that. You just kind of, go out and you're going to experience life. And when you create your own work, there will automatically be a whole reference database in your mind. You know, yeah, sure. There are going to be things that you haven't experienced up to that point, and you may never experience, and so you have to go to an exterior source to get that, you know, that reference material. But for the most part, a lot of that stuff can be referenced from your memories, you know, your mind, from your own experiences in life. But and that's I do a lot of that. You know, one of my friends who may or may not listen to this commentary, John, he used to ask me, you know, like he was like, what did you reference to do to get this scene, you know? And I'm like, I didn't reference anything. He was like, no, seriously, you know. And he'd go digging through my comic book collections, and he's like, aha, this must be something. This must be a source of something right here. The way that you have this separated from the others. And I'm like, no, I just really like reading that book. I like reading that series, you know. But it was never I never referenced other books, you know. I don't know. There's something about that. It's hard to reference another book because it's just, you can't replicate that. Well, I mean, some people probably can, but for me, it always comes out stiff looking. But I was just telling him, no, it's just coming out of my mind, you know. It's all, you know, life reference, you know. But anyways, more lasso tool work. Rock Eater manipulating stone, which is her thing, and that was one of the things I really regret not establishing 100% was the fact that the Rock Eater manipulates rock to the point that she creates artwork. All those statues in the sort of gallery going towards her room, her sort of lab where she works. She created all of that, and you don't really get a lot of that. And I'm sure it'll come up in. I do have a couple of flashbacks of, you know, Jeff's childhood and flashbacks to the Rock Eater when she was younger and things like that. But it was something that was supposed to be established in this particular story arc. You know, in the written version of the story, she actually talked about it, and they saw her working. You know, Jeff and Amy saw her working on a sculpture, and I don't know. I was slightly in a hurry to finish this story arc and get on with it. You know, get on, you know, to the Unlimited story arc, which, you know, comes up a little bit later, and I couldn't see in my mind how to visually convey her working on this stuff. It makes sense now, but at the time, I don't know, I wasn't there. And sometimes, you know, sometimes your work suffers for that. You know, if you're not there mentally, and you push forward, you keep pushing forward, then, you know, you sort of you have to cut stuff, and when you cut stuff, sometimes it I don't know. I don't know. I'm just sort of rambling. Trying not to make it sound like it's regret. And there's 26 getting snuck up on. He stabs her, and I was going to make a bigger deal of this whole stabbing, but especially in later issues, but I decided not to, because it's not as big a deal. It's, you know, some nerve damage there, but she's been through worse. Trust me, she's been through worse. The Dollry, that's what that thing was called. Yeah, the Dollry. And it was another, this whole, her thinking was another way to sort of reinforce in the readers, let them officially know, again, you know, yes, 26 is blind. Because it just wasn't something that was talked about, because there's really no reason to say it. You know, there's no reason for he and Sune and Sethire to talk about that when they know he is. I guess unless they're teasing him, but I didn't write that. I didn't write them teasing him like that. Yeah. She's sort of, kind of she doesn't want to treat him like a child, Reduha, but she's definitely she's giving him a lashing, sort of. um, and the I wanted to show sort of like there's this problem that the Rock Eater has, is that she has this way. Well, especially now, she now that Jeff is back in her life, she is going to make reference to Jeff's past mistakes and stuff, and it's really inappropriate of her to do something like that, but it happens. It happens. I don't know. I mean, I've experienced it where you are compared to someone else, or someone compares someone else. Like they you're there and they mention you and your faults in front of you to someone else, which is really embarrassing, really anger inducing, and it really just sort of it's another sort of it's another way of explaining to people why Jeff is so angry. I mean, when he gets this sort of thing in life, from his family, it kind of sucks. And they talk about the Platinus clan, and she knows she's very familiar with the Platinus clan, and I think I'm getting a lockup here. Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, and so we're pretty close to the end of the story, I think. 26 here, struggling with some unknown force, and then we finally see a hand, and I was just going nuts with sort of some effects and stuff. I wanted to show some things similar to what was happening to Jeff in, I believe that was issue 5, when the old lady Logic Smith that was sitting on top of the water sprite, the really big water sprite, what she was doing to him, where she was sort of levitating him and sort of really sort of hurting him without doing much of anything. But when someone can manipulate you, manipulate your limbs like that, yeah, you can do stuff. And he's really bending 26's spine, and sure, it hurts. He's kind of it's not exactly quartering, or like you draw and quarter someone, and I think that's what it is when they you tie someone to 4 horses, I believe. Like it's something that I believe that they used to do in the the Old West, I guess is what that era is considered, and they tie someone. I guess it's like the rack, in medieval times, or the Dark Ages, or the medieval. Where they would, you're tied to by 4 limbs and then stretched in those 4 directions, and he's sort of getting that kind of treatment here, as well as being bent by his spine. And oh wow, that is an intense yell. I do some really strange things with the Rock Eater, but I was still not 100% comfortable with her as a character at this point. I mean, she had already changed in her design. This is like the 3rd design change I made on her, just so that I could really push forward with some of the things that I wanted to do with her later in the series. Man, her mouth is, wow, that was intense. And then we see this character in the shadow, and then we finally get to see him. I mean, he's got the same skin tone as 26. He also has the same skin tone as Amy, and for the first time we actually get the Rock Eater's name revealed. Charlon is her name. Obviously, she was his master, his teacher, and you can see that he captured Lemur and Kelly. There was honestly, there was supposed to be this really big scene where Lemur and Kele chased the Rock Eater, and then they got distracted. They saw Reduha, and they were chasing Reduha down through all these, through all the, like the different. Oh wow! I can't believe I've forgotten what these things are called. You know, the steam, the whole steam, these boilers. That's what they're called. They're called boilers. You know, they were chasing him between the boilers and all the sorts of stuff, and he was getting lost in there and everything because he was panicking, and then there was supposed to be a scene where something happens and you see these things get captured, and that was supposed to be. I thought maybe it was a little too early to reveal the character of Noni, even if it was a slight reveal. I thought it was too early, and I decided to just opt with just revealing him 100% at the end. Also cutting that because it made the book way too big. You know, it was way too big, and I just wanted this book out. I wanted to get it done. It was never actually brought up to me. No one ever questioned it, and I would honestly, I do enjoy the questions. I enjoy when readers ask questions, and at this point, people were asking completely different questions than I thought they would have asked. No one asked if the flames coming off of his feet had anything to do with blue fire. And that is disappointing that no one asked that question. And because no one asked that question, I'm not going to, no. Yeah. And it's something that'll come up a little bit later in the series. They're related to it. And I'll explain it later on in the series. Why that is, it's not that uncommon. Blue fire is not that uncommon in certain circles. And certainly with this particular circle, which I'm establishing here, is that there are other sort of branch agents to this organization that Noni is a part of, and obviously that Charlon was a part of. I like Noni's design. It's really weird. He's got some really exaggerated features, and I love like exaggerated features because I love drawing faces, and Noni has a great face. It's just his features are so distinct, and he's a real character. Whereas 26 I think is a little bit more generic, and he's got very sculpted, very pretty features. He's very average to me. I don't. It sounds. I don't know how that sounds, but he is. He's very average and very beautiful. I'm not especially fond of very sculpted, beautiful people because they're very plain to look at. There's nothing distinct about their visual appearance, and I like seeing stuff that makes me take a double take and go, wow. I guess it's the cartoonist in me. And I like that, where there's some, not necessarily exaggerated features, but just something that makes that person look different than all the other people around them, where they stand out, and it's something that where if you wanted to draw them as a character, it would make them a distinct character. Because, you can make a lot of characters, like, honestly, 26 looks like a lot of characters to me. 26... I don't know how to explain it. He looks like a lot of characters I've drawn in my life. There's nothing distinct to me about him. And I'm not trying to diminish the character in any way, or and hopefully it doesn't have a negative. It doesn't have any sort of negative effect on anyone's liking or maybe disliking of the character. But to me, he is I know what 26 is. 26 is actually a redesign of a different character. When I was going to do Goblyn was originally 26 was going to be one of the main characters in one of the early versions of Goblin, before I gave it back the name of Goblin when it was just called 555. And it was supposed to be, well, exactly what Goblin eventually was, which is the offshoot series of an older series, which I guess at this point you're going to know when I'm recording this, Myth of Eustro, which is an older series, much, much older series from when I was in high school. And originally it was this really bonkers, really off-the-wall series. It was just completely crazy, completely nuts, just over-the-top action left and right, just really over-the-top stories and just nuts. Just pure imagination, and as I got to the end of my senior year, I really reeled it in and toned it down a lot. And then after high school, when I started self-publishing, I toned it down a whole lot. So much that all of the older stuff no longer fit. And so that's where the split came from, between Myth of Eustro and Goblin. That's how Goblin actually got its core. Goblin initially wasn't that story. Goblin was a completely different story. It doesn't, I'm not going to actually talk about what Goblin was originally, because some of that does come into play again in the later half of the series. But when I decided to take up Goblin again in early 2009, I went through a lot of the characters that hadn't got used in the offshoot series that I was going to do while I was doing Myth of Eustro under its old name, which I'm not going to mention. But I created all these sort of alternate reality versions of the main characters from the Myth of Eustro series. And 26 was the alternate version of the main character Luna, which is why he has a bat. Because the main character Luna in the Myth of Eustro has a bat. And so that's why he looks a lot like the old version of the Luna character. And so that's why he's a little generic to me. But I made some changes here and there and did some things. And of course I gave him a totally different personality, a different background. But still, there's a little history there. There's a little bit of history, kind of goes. It's just one of those things, I went back through and I just took all the characters, these different characters, and I wove them into this story as I was rebuilding the story in early 2009. And we established that Noni and 26 are related. Noni is really angry. He's a much more serious and intense character than 26 is. 26 seemed a little batty early on. He was definitely supposed to be really creepy, weird, and I guess not creepy, weird. But he was in my mind, it was that he was sort of vampiric. He was he was like a predator. And I'm not saying that changed. It's just that I wanted to pull away from that temporarily to show that he is also very vulnerable when surrounded by his relatives. When he's around his family, he's kind of different. And that's how we all are. We're different people around our friends. We're different people around our enemies. We're different people around strangers than we are around our family. At least until we become comfortable with the people in our extended circles. But we're never exactly like we are with our friends and with strangers and with just people in our extended circles that we are in our direct circle, our family. We're never exactly the same. Even if you get married to someone and you spend 40, 50 years with that person, you're never exactly the same kind of person. Your personality never fully comes out the same way that it does when you're with your family members. And I don't know, there's something to be said about that. I don't know what could be said about that other than what I just said. So that was kind of a stupid statement, but anyways, but it was something that I recognized, that my family, I'm different around my family than I am around my friends, but only by a little bit, and then I'm completely different around strangers. I'm Most strangers just kind of they're like, oh, you're really shy, you're really quiet. Oh man, that's wow. Oh my gosh, and then like in school, I would in college and when I was at art school, I would get accused of being an extrovert, and I'm like, well, no, I'm a bit of an introvert, and my professors would be like, no, no, and I was like, well, it's just that I'm really comfortable. I'm in my environment. I'm in art school. I'm doing, I'm actually taking classes on something that I love. So no, hey, I'm having fun, and when I'm having fun, I can't help but be bubbly and outspoken, and speak my mind, and I don't know. It happens like that. I was still to a degree uncomfortable enough that I didn't. I wouldn't say that I made a lot of friends. I didn't just walk up to people and talk to them. Usually it took an entire semester to get to know people. And I mean, there were still people that I only slightly knew. Whereas then there are other people that I became really close with, like my friend LD. But yeah. Anyways, enough about me and more about these characters. So we're pretty much at the end of the story, which is why I'm rambling. And I mean, wow, that's a really huge dialogue bubble. There was a lot of text in there. And it was. I needed to. I do remember the reason why there are a lot of dialogue bubbles towards the end, and it was because I need to get a lot of information out there, but I didn't want to add a bunch of extra pages of just talking heads. Yeah, but I wanted to show sort of that sort of, it's not a neutrality, like the branch members don't exist in sort of this neutrality. They are, it's that thing that she talks about here, their motto, the ends justify the means, which sort of, I wanted to say that it was hinting at the fact that they will kind of do just about anything to get what they want. They're not good and they're not bad. They're sort of in the middle, and that's where the balance kind of comes in. But it's also kind of that cutting off point for a character like Charlon, the Rock Eater, is like, sometimes they do too much. Sometimes they go a little too far, to where it seems corrupt. And she had to leave for reasons that'll show up in a different commentary. We'll go into some flashbacks and things like that. But yeah, I mean, she left, and her students accepted it. But yeah, that actually is a mistake, I believe. Yeah. This is actually a mistake. I noticed that I did this a lot. What he says is, I hear she's from the Westlands. She is practically family then. She's not from the Westlands. She's from the... Oh no, my fault. I'm sorry. In my mind, I inverted again. I inverted a second time, east and west. She is from the Westlands. In the original version of this, before I posted it online, it said she was from the Eastlands, and then I had to correct it. But yes, okay, she is from the Westlands. It was such a big error that it stuck with me, because I was all ready to upload it, and I was reading through it one more time before I uploaded it, and I saw that and I freaked out, because it's a very big deal, where on the global map these characters originate from, because every position on, all the different places on this map are very significant to events that happen not only in the story but in the history of this world. And making a mistake, and I've made a few mistakes, especially recently, and more recent issues, but making a mistake like that for me it just created panic, and it stuck with me. Wow, that's crazy. It stuck with me enough that I inverted again, even though I saw it said Westland, I inverted it, and the West was on the East Coast for some odd reason. But yeah, she's from the Westlands. He says then she is practically family then, and we know that Noni and 26 are Platinus clan. So yeah, there are a few you can speculate what's going on here. It's me sort of playing around with the idea, like a little hint here, a little there. Maybe there's something more than meets the eye to Amy. And I like this sort of little transition, him sort of being engulfed by this blue fire. And I'll go ahead and I'll just explain it now, even though it's going to show up in a later issue to some degree, how this works or why he's doing what he does. And hey, just accept it as it's not a spoiler. It's sort of because it was supposed to be explained somewhat in this particular arc, and at least with the character Noni, he was supposed to demonstrate how it was working. And I decided to cut that because I wanted to show some other stuff later on in the series. But yeah, well, you know what? It's terrible. I'm not going to talk about it. I'm not going to talk about it. Anyways, I love that phrase, Jushe Megata. Jushe Megata, which is a phrase that I came up with. My friends used to hate when I'd say it. But it's like, it's sort of like au revoir. It's until we meet again kind of thing, safe journey until we meet again. Because while Charlone disassociates herself as much as she can from the branch agents and that whole organization, we'll find out as the series goes on that it's kind of impossible. They are always involved in her life. They're always there. Always. That's the way they work. And so, he disappears up in a poof of flame. That's pretty much, yeah. I mean, that's the end of, that's the end of the book. It wasn't exactly 100% the ending that I wanted. There was supposed to be some involvement with Jeff and Amy and things like that. They were supposed to witness. Originally, they were supposed to witness Noni doing that. Disappearing like that. They were supposed to notice him in a couple of different places. Like they were going to see Noni like early in the draft of this issue. And when I say draft, I don't mean any of it was on paper, because very rarely does anything ever end up on paper. I just work everything out in my mind, which is kind of how some stuff gets a little convoluted. Some of it gets a little messy as far as the way that the stories work out. Is because I don't write too much stuff down, because that also gets messy and it takes up a lot of paper, because I'll scratch out an entire 6 pages of work and I'll just throw it all away and start over, or I'll keep one paragraph and then 6 pages later is the continuation. And I'm like, that's a waste of paper, and I don't want to type on a computer either, because it's just, I don't want to sit there and read back through all that writing. It's unappealing to me. The writing process is unappealing to me. I'd rather just kind of act it out, live. I just kind of pace around in my room, talking to myself, which makes me look like a crazy person because I'm acting out scenes and things like that. And I just act out the whole scenario, figure it all out, figure out the continuity, where it takes place in continuity, and then I just sit down and start drawing it, and because I've acted it all out, or most of it I've acted out, because obviously I can't act out all of it, because they do some stuff that I can't do. But once I've acted it out, it's sort of stuck in my mind. It's in there, temporarily. And so when I go to draw, I can reference that immediate memory of what I was doing. The emotions, the intensity, the facial, the facial expressions. Jeez, I can, all of that. Is right there in my immediate memory, and so I'm able to reference that when I'm actually drawing. And if I hit a point where I don't know where to go further, then I simply get up and I act it out again, and sometimes, because I'm very tangential, the way that my brain works, if you ever have a conversation with me, or honestly, if you're listening to these commentaries and you've listened to a few of them, you realize that I'm very tangential. It's the way that my family works in conversation, and I think it's because there are so many of us. I mean, not just my immediate family, but my extended family, my aunts, uncles, cousins, things like that. We would always do these family reunions like every summer, and we all get around, and the kids, when we were little, we would sit and we would just, listen to them all telling their stories, from their childhood and their teen years and stuff like that, and we would listen to these stories, and you hear the overlap in on all these different stories, and you get all these different perspectives and stuff like that. And it's sort of, because that's the way that they behave. The kids all grew up behaving like that. Well, not necessarily all grew up behaving like that, but certainly my family behaves like that, where we sort of talk like this, and we talk over one another, not in a what is the word that I'm looking for? This is what happens when I ramble. I sort of, my entire vocabulary just goes kaput. It's not disrespectful. We're not doing it to be disrespectful. It's sort of like playing telephone in a way. It's not really like playing telephone, but it's sort of like campfire stories. We're all sitting around and we're all sort of we're talking, and then it's easy for someone to get interrupted, and someone else talks about something because it triggered a memory. It triggered something that they remembered that's related. It may be loosely related to what you're talking about, but it's related. And then, that breaks off, and there's the opportunity for someone else to jump in with something that triggered something that the other person said that triggered a memory, a story for them, or the first person goes back, just picks up with their story where they were before. And that's the reason, I don't know if I've explained it on any of the other commentaries, and I know I've explained it to only a few of my friends, but that's the reason why I am so tangential. I seem like I'm very scatterbrained, and it's because this is the way that my family communicates. And so I have this way of sort of, I dance around the topic, then I come right back. So anyway, so having said that, ultimately, what happened is that Amy and Jeff were supposed to have witnessed Noni. He was supposed to have appeared earlier in the story to them, because he just kind of showed up and he saw what was going on because his brother was involved, and they sent him out. His brother was involved, and then Sune and Sethai were also involved, and they're branch members. But we'll also talk about some of that other stuff later. And so he went to go and find out what was going on, and he appeared in one area where Jeff was, and he appears where Amy is, where all of them were, and he didn't get involved in that, but he did show up briefly. Jeff saw it, and he saw him disappear, and then later on he sees him reappear in this area, in the I believe it's called the steam room. I don't know. I don't remember. The steam halls is what this area is called, and this will make more sense later on in the commentary. I assume that anyone watching the commentary has already read most of the issues, and since this commentary is so late, about the Circles of Blue Fire. I'm assuming. If you don't, I am so sorry, but this is kind of a spoiler. And he was supposed to witness him coming through a circle of blue fire, and because Jeff knows what that is, he made the connection, and he was witnessing Noni using blue fire to float, to hover, to levitate. And he was just he was really inspired by that, and he wanted to learn that. I cut that. I cut that whole sequence because it extended the issue way too long. But that's sort of, it comes with the writing process, for me, is I don't write a lot of stuff down. I act it out, and stuff gets cut, or it gets overwritten by the fact that I'm very, my mind is very tangential, and sometimes I will forget things, because they get sort of overwritten by stuff that's a little bit more important. And that whole idea sort of got forgotten. And because it wasn't really important, I realized obviously the most important things are the things that make it to the final version of the book. But I also didn't want Jeff to come off as sort of this guy who looks up to everyone just because something is cool. He's not really like that. He mostly doesn't care. It's kind of like, oh, wow. He'd be kind of like the guy who's like, oh, wow, that's different. Maybe I can do that. But, he wouldn't be like, oh, wow, that's awesome. I need to learn how to do that. I'm going to go learn how to do that. He wouldn't be inspired by it. He'd just be like, oh, okay. He'd be more like jealous in a way, envious that someone can do something that he can't, even though he knows he's very limited. He doesn't like being confronted by someone else with that fact. He doesn't like being reminded of that. But I've been talking for a long time, and that's sort of me making up for the fact that all these commentaries are coming so late. But I'm finally starting to play catch up now and get back to doing commentaries. And thank you to all that have watched the commentaries, commented, sent me notes and letters and emails requesting the commentaries to return, reminding me that there were older commentaries that had not been posted. They just sort of end. You know who you are. So thank you anyways for, sort of, keeping it always in my mind, and not letting me become a slacker when it comes to something that obviously we all really enjoy. I never want to become that guy who walks away from something because he just sort of got comfortable with not doing it, got comfortable, and ended up walking away from it. I don't want to become that guy. I'd rather, maintain some sort of schedule and a bridge, between me and everyone that enjoys this series. That sounds really bizarre, but like I said, when I do these commentaries, I am a sort of nerve-wracking. I'm a bit nervous when I do these, so it's kind of my vocabulary sort of goes out the window, and I'm thinking about a million things, and I'm worried that I've forgotten to mention something, and yeah, I will say I apologize for the 12A commentary because I believe I'm keeping the original commentary that I originally recorded many, many months ago, like back when the issue actually came out. And it's it's not very depressing, but it's a little bit of a downer. But I decided there were some truths in there that I felt that should be out there, that people needed to hear. So, all right. So that is the end of this commentary. Hopefully you will join me on future commentaries, and I thank you for all the support and the comments and the replies and just reading the series and just the feedback, and I want to just thank everybody for the fan art and all that stuff. And just anyways, this sounds like I got an Oscar or something. So or I guess more appropriately, since it's a comic, an Eisner. So I'm just gonna end now because it's getting ridiculous. I just never know how to end these. So thank you and goodbye.